Hello, this is Kylie with Fem and Flow. I hope everyone's having a great day. I saw a quote on X that I deeply, deeply agreed with. So I wanted to share it here and expand on it. So this is the topic of the whole episode. So here's the quote: Satanism doesn't mean worshiping a red guy with horns. Satanism means taking that which is righteous and natural and inverting it. Most of society is satanic and they don't even know it. If you've listened to my other episodes on the energy of the different dimensions and you've heard me talk about how it's all connected, it all goes together, it's actually extremely magical and truly beyond human comprehension, then you know this all goes into the divine order of God. And spirituality and quantum physics are actually deeply, deeply intertwined and connected. We have this wonderful, great mystery that is God, but we can look to some different concepts in quantum physics to understand how some of that works. But even what we do understand is just scratching the surface of this wonderful, powerful God energy. When I talk about the different dimensions and how they step down into a different frequency, and then that creates a different realm of energy with different energetic characteristics, then you understand how this divine energy is creating this divine order, and that goes along with what is natural and what is righteous. It's just simply a outcome of how this energy works in the universe, and this is the divine order. I've mentioned some of this in previous episodes, but it's worth mentioning again because it ties into this. It's common to think, okay, so if there is a God, then where does this evil come from? I've said this before, but it's so important. We really need to stop giving any fear to the idea of the devil or Satan. There is absolutely no dark equivalent to the power of God, but there is darkness and evil. It's just no match or comparison at all to God and God's divine order. What I refer to as God and what the light refers to as God is literally all that is. It creates everything. It creates all the universes. It creates galaxies. It creates literally everything. There is no evil equivalent to this. God is source energy and makes up literally everything. God is the great mystery, the divine mind, and is what creates all of this beauty and this divine order of the universe. But just FYI, sometimes the dark will refer to quote unquote lowercase God, but they aren't referring to the same God as the light refers to. They are actually referring to Satan. Their lowercase God is Satan, and they are following the Luciferian agenda. And not to freak anyone out, but a lot of what we've been taught here on earth, such as different traditions, ceremonies, rituals, holidays, stuff like that, a lot of what we're taught that refers to God or Jesus is a lie. And a lot of these customs are not tied to the true God of the light. It's tied to a lowercase God that actually aligns with Satanism. But like I said, Satanism is not worshiping a man with horns in a red cape. I believe I've said this before, but we really need to question absolutely everything. We need to step back and realize, okay, we see this darkness running rampant. We really need to question any organization and any system that has been allowed to succeed and grow under this current regime. The current regime is Satanism. So yes, to put it bluntly, we also need to question organized religion. And we need to question this idea of God that organized religion is pushing. and we need to question the traditions, the customs, the holidays, and literally everything. We need to question everything. I've talked about how these dark beings came to be, but I'll talk about it again. Remember, we currently access energetically dimensions 1 through 8, and the ninth dimension is a white or a black hole that creates a universe. When we fully resonate with all 1 through 8 dimensional energies, and in these heavenly realms, there is total freedom and total bliss. This is where we live for eternity. Fully resonating with these energies is our natural state. The natural state is all high vibe energy. It's enlightenment, love, bliss, etc. And if you listen to my last podcast episode, you know that when I say high vibe enlightenment level energy, I'm specifically referring to the 8 solfeggio frequencies that make up the voice of God. Remember, everything in the universe goes back to energy vibrating at different frequencies. Literally everything is derived from this. A group of beings wanted to experiment what would happen if they cut themselves off from these higher dimensional energies. The 8th dimension is God energy, source energy, pure high vibrational light. With God or source energy, we are fully sustained and we have no needs. All is in harmony when we fully resonate with all of the higher dimensional energies, and we don't even age. When the beings experimented to see what would happen when they cut themselves off from higher dimensional energies, they were no longer connected to God or source energy, and they were no longer sustained by God. This is where the term fallen angel comes from. These beings, quote unquote, fell from source. They were no longer connected and no longer sustained by source energy. As soon as they disconnected from source, the polarity of the universe shifted, and this universe went from being a universe created from a white hole that was all high vibrational with no duality and no polarity. That shifted to a universe created from a black hole where there was duality and polarity. Like I mentioned in a previous podcast, the energy from a black hole is in a downward spiral where a white hole has energy that is spiraling up. With a black hole, the universe can experience low vibrations and low frequencies, which translates into low vibration emotions and situations. These beings then put up a false matrix to cut humanity off from higher dimensional energies, so they also would no longer be fully sustained by source. That way, these beings could take advantage of humanity in various ways. Some effects of being cut off from higher dimensional energies are as follows. You are no longer enlightened and understand the truth of God and the universe. You forget everything before incarnating in. For example, you forget your whole eternal life and that the concept of death on earth is just an illusion. You age and you eventually die, but like I said, death on earth is just an illusion. You no longer are fully sustained from God or source energy, and therefore you must eat food for energy, and you have other needs you must fulfill as well. You are no longer innately connected to God, which gives you higher knowledge and intuition. Therefore, you can unknowingly be manipulated and led astray by the dark. Just to be clear, humanity wasn't fully cut off from source energy, but they were cut off just enough to be brainwashed and manipulated, etc. Since the fallen angel beings were no longer connected to source energy or God, they had to sustain themselves off something, so they sustained themselves off of humanity's energy. They harvest energy from humans to sustain themselves, and they do this in various ways. One very dark way they harvest energy is through satanic ritual abuse, or SRA. They sacrifice children, engage in pedophilia, and R-word children. Remember that emotions all hold unique vibrations and frequencies. So think of all the very low vibrational emotions and therefore energy that happens during these dark rituals. That is insane level darkness, but they can even energy harvest in more covert methods like using music, movies, news, mass trauma events, and things along those lines. Anything that causes a lot of low vibrational energy to be created. Remember, these dark beings don't have the power to create or manifest their reality like we do, so they have to manipulate humanity to play out their agenda. They do this with thought forms, and they use the media, TV, movies, and entertainment to do so. I've talked more in depth on other episodes about this. They also will emotionally manipulate people to be in favor of wars. Wars are a huge way they money launder, but it's also a huge method of energy harvesting. Okay, so that's the foundation of this concept, but now I want to talk about how Satanism is taking all things righteous and natural and inverting it. This connects and draws from a past episode I did on the 9 different dimensions we currently access energetically. We can break the false matrix and then eventually shift the polarity of this universe back to the heaven on earth state. And this also is shifting the polarity back to a universe created from a white hole instead of a black hole. We do this by doing things to actively anchor in higher dimensional energies that the false matrix cuts us off from. In that other episode, I talked about all of the very beautiful, natural, normal ways we can anchor in higher dimensional energies. It is wild how when you start going through them, you realize our current society, controlled by the dark, do things or spread narratives to prevent us from doing those things or hijack it in some way. They do everything they can to prevent us from anchoring in higher dimensional energies because they know once we start, we will start connecting to God, to source energy, and that will connect us to higher guidance, connect us to intuition, lead us to enlightenment, and lead us back to remembering our true power and our true divinity. Once we do that, it's absolutely over for them. Once we connect to God, we will start to see the truth about what is actually going on here, and we will see all the lies, manipulation, and brainwashing. We connect to God internally, and once we properly connect, we become enlightened and we see past this malarkey. We will also remember why we came here, and we will remember our mission. And also, it's worth noting, if you recently had a spiritual awakening and you're just starting this process, remember to ground, put your bare feet on earth. That will really help you energetically. And also remember that this darkness is in fact real. You need to acknowledge that the dark does exist so you can properly protect yourself against it. You can go back and listen to episodes I did on how to protect your energy. But when you just had a spiritual awakening, it can feel like a lot at first and you can be confused. And since you're new to the process, this could potentially be prime time where this dark tries to lead you astray. And that's because you're on the right path and you've awakened, but they could try to lead you astray and away from the truth. But like I say a lot, don't be afraid. Just know that darkness does exist. Learn how to properly protect yourself. Definitely ground. Listen to high frequency music, meditate, do things to get your mindset right. Sometimes when someone's new to their spiritual awakening and they're really seeking and they feel like they have a new mission, a new purpose, and they're really seeking that out, sometimes if you don't realize that the darkness does exist and you don't know how to protect yourself from that yet, You can go through what might look like spiritual psychosis, and that could also be the dark leading you astray. For example, if you just believe everything out there is light and you don't understand that there truly is darkness out there, and you don't know how to protect your energy yet, and you don't ground properly, you could be thinking you're working with your guides or something like that. But it could actually be you getting subtly led astray by the dark on purpose to prevent you from getting on your right path. But again, don't let any of this scare you, because it's actually much scarier when you go through this firsthand. So just learn all of this background, learn how to protect your energy, understand the dark side of it as well, understand they're there, it's real, and learn how to ground and protect your energy, like I mentioned. Okay, now I'll move on and give some examples on how we anchor in higher dimensional energies and even physical dimensional energy of the dimensions 1 through 3. I'll start with the eighth. And the eighth dimension is God, source energy, pure light. We connect to God, source energy, the divine mind, with our pineal gland or our third eye. Our pineal gland is like our antenna for the divine. This truth has largely been hidden from humanity. In the USA, the government even adds fluoride to our tap water, our toothpaste, etc., and fluoride calcifies the pineal gland. Growing up in public school, I even remember every Wednesday they would pass around little cups of fluoride for all the kids to swish in their mouth. Looking back, that you would do that at school, and that was tied into education. Now let's talk about the seventh dimension. The seventh dimension is ruled by sound vibrations. The dark has completely weaponized the music industry, and popular music is literal programming. If you listen to my past episodes, you know literally our entire universe can be derived from sound vibrations, specifically the solfeggio frequencies. In a previous episode, I talked about the specific frequency that these dimensions correlate to. So once we understand that, we can also see how just skewing these frequencies in our music, hidden frequencies that go through cell towers, radio waves, etc., if we subtly skew those away from the solfeggio frequencies that creates divine order, we can actually cause way more damage than people even realize. There's absolutely sound frequencies that fall in line with God's divine order and therefore are natural and righteous. So when we skew our natural frequencies away from frequencies that follow the divine order of God and the divine order of the universe, when we skew those, that equates to an inversion. Okay, now let's talk about the sixth dimension, which is ruled by sacred geometry. We could use sacred geometry to provide free energy, but the dark lies and hides this technology. Our bodies are electromagnetic, and they are our energetic tool we use to interact in the physical and create our reality. Our bodies are our sacred vessel, and we should treat it as such. Our bodies do have an ideal geometric shape, and when our bodies follow this ideal sacred geometrical shape, that's when they're their healthiest energetically. The dark knows this and hijacks us in so many ways. This includes poisoning us with toxic foods, pushing pharmaceuticals, confusing us with what is healthy or not, creating a system where we are too busy or too tired to move our bodies properly. There are so many ways. Now we'll talk about the fifth dimension. The fifth dimension is the realm of miracles, life, love, bliss, beauty, synchronicity. The dark has completely hijacked relationships, partnerships, and sacred unions. They attempt to poison our minds and confuse us around these topics. They have pitted men and women against each other in many ways, confuse people about sexuality, their own bodies, and have skewed natural beauty. They also attempt to skew and distort the truth about feminine and masculine energies. And before I say this next part, I want to preface it with saying I am not judging people who fall into this category at all. I love them. I love everyone. I talk on and on about how much I love humanity and how I truly believe that humans are innately of the light and humans innately want to do what's right and what's good. And I certainly don't think this is a sin. I don't think people are going to quote unquote hell for this. Sin and hell are concepts made up to control, push fear, push guilt, and manipulate. Remember, guilt and fear are the basis of manipulation. If people fall into this category, I know you may even feel like you can't control it or choose, and I know you may feel like it just comes natural. I have complete compassion for this. Here's my whole point. There are so many things done to distort and do the inverse of what is natural, and these things are done very covert, but done on a massive, massive scale to the point this is the majority of society. Okay, so now that I've said all of that, being confused about our own gender and our own sexuality fall into this category of distortion. Giving children and young adults gender transition surgery, hormones, and medication is absolutely evil, and it falls in line with this concept of Satanism I'm talking about. Even giving adults this without making sure they are mentally healthy and mentally sound first is evil. If a grown adult that has already made sure they are mentally sound and they've walked through any past traumas and they've gone through any past issues, if they've gone through all of that, they can understand themselves and they still want to do this, then I think they should be able to. But this is a slippery slope because it's pretty subjective. Let me be crystal clear. These people are not bad. They are not evil. I'm not saying the person themselves falls in line with Satanism. I'm just saying the whole Satanism agenda rules society in these covert ways. People should not judge or hate, only have empathy, love, and compassion. And I guarantee we all are taking part in the Satanist agenda in ways we don't even realize. Because, like I said, it's not worshiping a red man with horns. Satanism is taking what is righteous and natural and inverting it. I was very cautious about mentioning the last part about gender and sexual confusion because it's such a hot button, emotionally charged issue, and the last thing I want to do is offend anyone. But let's think about that for a moment. In my episodes, one of the main subjects we go over nonstop is how we must be fully in charge of our emotions and emotional responses because they create our reality. I also talk about how we must have a regulated nervous system so we are able to truly step back, be an observer, and not automatically send out emotional frequencies. I also say constantly that fear and guilt are the basis of manipulation. The dark purposefully sets it up so things like this are extremely emotionally charged subjects. It's completely a manipulation and brainwashing tactic. It's all part of their dark strategy. Also, when people with dysregulated nervous systems get triggered and they spew their emotions and attack, their logical thinking has stopped. At this point, these people are like puppets. They are essentially falling in line with the fourth dimensional false matrix programming, which is the Satanist agenda. They want to invert all that is natural, all that naturally falls in line with God's divine order. So humanity is cut off from anchoring in God source energy. And this is to keep people with blinders on, brainwashed, and manipulated so they can continue to harvest our energy. And these people who are just falling in line with fourth dimensional false matrix programming, they don't even realize it, but they are being guided by darkness. Following the light, the truth, what is righteous and natural is a pretty nuanced path because of all the brainwashing, programming, and how humanity has been cut off from higher dimensional energies. The dark sets up traps everywhere. You certainly won't walk the path of truth by blindly following an organized religion or blindly following anything, in fact. We only can follow the light, the truth, what is righteous and natural by finding God internally, by doing things to connect to God, to source energy, to higher dimensional energy. This will connect us to our true intuition and divine guidance. We must meditate, find peace and solitude so we can connect to God and the higher dimensional energies, and so we can disconnect from being energetically connected to the fourth dimensional false matrix. You've probably heard of the concept that we have an angel on one shoulder and a devil on the other. When we connect and resonate to higher dimensional energies, including eighth dimensional God energy, it's like we are listening and being guided by the angel. When we are plugged into the energy of the fourth dimensional false matrix, it is like we are being guided by the devil. If you want more info on this, go listen to my episode on fourth dimensional influences. One example of something connected to fourth dimensional influences is alcohol. Alcohol strips your energetic field and your energetic protection, and you become a puppet for fourth dimensional beings. If this sounds extreme, it isn't. This is actually one of the most obvious fourth dimensional influences. There are many other much more covert influences than alcohol. This reality is like one big satanic party, and we need to wake up to the truth. Another fourth dimensional influence is herd mentality. With herd mentality, if you just put one planted agent or even just successfully program one person, you've got the lot. Stop being afraid of not fitting in. Stop being afraid of having a different opinion. The herd is brainwashed. The herd is going to run you off a cliff. I'm pretty aware that the things I share here and the things I have in my head sound literally insane to a lot of the population. In the past, I've been very reserved about sharing my thoughts, but I'm going to start being more outspoken. I challenge you to do the same. You can be strategic about it, but I think it is really important to share. And by being strategic about it, I mean subtly planting seeds to some, talking about certain concepts you think would resonate and maybe open someone's eyes. You don't have to just dump everything on a person. Just do what you think is best. Tap into your emotional intelligence for this. Back to herd mentality. When these people are plugged into the fourth dimensional false matrix and just following brainwashing and programming, they are also policing each other and attacking anyone who goes against the herd. They won't even be aware of this, but it may look like the outsider triggering the herd member and them getting their puppet strings pulled via their emotions, and then a non-logical attack. Also connected to the fifth dimension energy getting inverted is the inversion of what we view as beautiful, and this can be seen in trends regarding body image, architecture, and art. This may be a hot take, but these things aren't as subjective as we think. There isn't one standard, there is a range to this, but think about how we have discussed the true nature of God and the divine order. We see this reflected in sacred geometry, mathematics, the golden ratio, the Fibonacci sequence. There is a divine order to the universe, and this divine order defines what is naturally beautiful. When the dark brainwashes people to start seeking beauty outside of this expression of God's divine order, they are inverting what is righteous and natural. Another example is body image. I've mentioned before how sixth-dimensional sacred geometry does dictate an ideal sacred geometrical form of the human body. While how this physical form generates energy is more sixth-dimensional, the aesthetics and beauty of the body is more fifth dimensional. There is a body shape that is naturally more aesthetically beautiful and in line with divine order. The body positivity movement, in the aspect of celebrating and applauding unhealthy standards, also falls in line with inverting what is natural. So is celebrating and pushing too skinny and malnourished models and setting that as the ideal standard. Here we are seeing another example of duality and how both sides of the spectrum are actually covert schemes of the dark and are inversions of what is naturally beautiful. Here we see another example of duality. Both sides of the spectrum are actually covert schemes of the dark, and then what is actually naturally beautiful lies in the spectrum. This is another area where the dark has really weaponized our emotions. We feel one with our bodies, even though they are our physical vessel, and our soul and our consciousness are the most important and everlasting part. Outside of this earth experience, out in the heavenly realms, we are not tied to one body or one vessel, and we actually can very easily alter our vessel to exactly how we want to look. Another thing to mention is how society seems to set it up so art and beauty seem frivolous and not as important. They set it up so it seems like studying the economy, finance, or healthcare are more noble, when in fact those are all things just feeding and sustaining their false matrix system. Do you see the brainwashing here? Insert gaslighting. How can you care about fashion and self-expression when people are dying? We've all heard that gaslighting and we've seen it everywhere. That is all brainwashing. And see how the brainwashing can be very covert? You might emotionally care about the environment or see how there's a lot of poverty, and then you might get on your emotional self-righteous soapbox and say, how can you care about fashion or art or beauty when there's so much poverty? I get the viewpoint, but that is a very third dimensional false matrix viewpoint, if I'm being honest. That is what the dark global elite want you to think. That keeps you brainwashed and in their little system. They want you to believe in scarcity. But truly, reality is observer dependent. You have to go beyond just being tied into this third dimensional viewpoint that the fourth dimensional false matrix rules over, if that makes sense. Okay, here's another huge point. A huge point of inversion. Death and aging are constructs of the false matrix. Death is a way out of the Satanist party. Death on earth is just an illusion. Death actually frees us from this. Death is the least of our worries. This is another wild brainwashing point. Like, hey, I'm not planning on taking the first class Twilight train out of here. I have work to do, but I want to look and feel good doing it. Another huge distortion or inversion are beliefs around sex and relationships. Sex is sacred and an energetic exchange. I go more in depth on other episodes if you're interested. This casual hookup culture and how nonchalant society views sex is a huge inversion. Also, how the dark brainwashes society regarding relationships is a huge inversion. I've mentioned it before, but it's crazy how it seems trendy right now to hate on men. Listen to my episode on sacred unions for more information regarding relationships, and also listen to my episode on the divine feminine and divine masculine energies. I've also talked about how the fifth dimension works and operates from synchronicity. What is an inversion of synchronicity? Forcing things, pushing, being overly ambitious, grind culture. We are supposed to be in flow and ease. Wonderful, magical things just happen. Also, let's chat about how the fifth dimension is associated with miracles and life. Life is a miracle. I've mentioned in a previous episode how the fifth dimensional frequency is 528 Hz, which is associated with transformation and miracles. Chlorophyll, the green pigment in plants responsible for photosynthesis, vibrates at or near the frequency of 528 Hz. 528 Hz is known as the love or miracle tone. It has a natural resonance with the biological process of life, including those found in plant life. So, I mentioned how chlorophyll is responsible for photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is the process by which plants, algae, and some bacteria convert light energy, usually from the sun, into chemical energy or fuel. It is the primary source of energy for nearly all life on Earth, since most organisms depend directly or indirectly on the carbohydrates produced by photosynthesis. It also plays a crucial role in regulating atmospheric oxygen and carbon dioxide levels. Photosynthesis is a fundamental process for life, converting solar energy into a form usable by biological systems, thereby sustaining the biosphere. This is a great example of how the different dimensional energies work together to create everything. Eighth dimensional God source energy, pure light, which is the solfeggio frequencies, all in harmonic resonance. Then it moves down octaves to the seventh dimension, which is ruled by sound vibrations at 741 Hz. The sound vibrations of the seventh dimension creates the sacred geometrical patterns and forms of the sixth dimension. These sacred geometrical forms step down into the fifth dimension, 528 Hz frequency, to give it life. This is a miracle. This frequency creates life, beauty, bliss, and synchronicity. We see this concept translated into reality when we talk about how photosynthesis works, how the sunlight fuels biological life. And I've mentioned the third dimension is the realm of biological life. See how it all works together and is all connected? And the fourth dimension is the realm of archetypes, myths, and the collective mind, and it sets the vibe and fairy tale land of the physical experience. It sets the programming, sets the matrix, essentially sets up the game. You see how this works? And when you get to the basis of all of it, it is all sound frequencies, which is energy vibrating. And light is energy. While we can make it sound simple like that, it is actually anything but. It is amazing, a miracle, the great mystery, God's divine order, the divine mind. So now let's connect this to the topic of the episode, which is inverting all that is righteous and natural, all that follows God's divine order. In simple terms, with photosynthesis, plants convert sun into sugar that fuels them. We all probably are aware how consuming sugar is a health concern for humans. So why is it a miracle for plants and some biological life, but unhealthy for humans? Sugar is a huge area of this inversion we are discussing in this episode. Fruit has sugars, and I don't know about you, but good fruit is magical, amazing, and is like God's candy. Fruit has the right fiber, sugar, and nutrient balance that goes along with God's divine order. We need to really question any genetically modified produce. This could be one of these inversions. These fake sugar substitutes are huge inversions. They do not go along with biological life and God's divine order. Also, how the food industry chemically alters sugars and how they blend it is a huge inversion, and it's very bad for our bodies. The dark has altered and weaponized something so natural and so beautiful. If we want to be dramatic, we could say that sugar substitutes, the sugar in junk foods and genetically modified produce, is Antichrist. There is an ideal or healthiest fructose glucose blend for humans to consume when it comes to sugar. You want to have a balanced blend of fructose and glucose, as found in whole fruits. We also want the sugars in the most natural form possible because the original nutrient balance and water content is very important. I'm not a doctor or a dietitian or a nutritionist. Not that I trust the Western medical industry, but here's what I recommend. When it comes to sugar, aside from natural whole fruits, stick with raw honey, 100% organic maple syrup, and natural raw sugar. Since whole fruits are great and applesauce is mushed up apple, you could also sweeten certain things with certain applesauce. Just make sure there's no added sugars. Dates are also a great sweetener, and they're very high in fiber. Now let's move on to fourth dimensional inversions. The fourth dimension is the realm of archetypes, myths, and the collective mind. You can view the fourth dimension as the programming, the matrix, or the veil that sets the vibe and creates a fairy tale land. This is a non-physical realm that canopies over the physical dimensions. I talk about it every episode, so it is probably obvious how this has completely inverted. The dark hijacked the fourth dimension and put up a false matrix, essentially. And this was done to control, manipulate, and brainwash society. The dark also manipulates the original Earth archetypes. And by original, I mean before the dark hijacked. Some of these original archetypes are the zodiacs and astrology. And this just talks about how the Earth position in the universe can actually say a lot about the energy. And this can actually really help us and guide us and give us a lot of insight. Another original archetype of the Earth fourth dimension is the concept of sacred unions and divine feminine and masculine energies. I did a whole podcast on this if you're interested. The dark manipulates and brainwashes and tries to push fear and guilt around astrology. Organized religion tends to demonize it, while popular culture makes it seem silly and nonsensical with the little magazine horoscopes. Then other groups make it seem uneducated or quote-unquote woo-woo. Some groups make it seem like spiritual nonsense. Guys, this is all brainwashing and programming. We really need to stop being controlled by fourth dimensional false matrix programming, and we need to stop with the herd mentality. The truth is very nuanced. The dark comes in from all angles. You can't fall into duality traps because they set up traps at all angles, like I mentioned. The dark inverts the idea of sacred unions in so many ways. Like I said, I have 2 separate episodes on sacred unions and then one on divine feminine and masculine energies. So go listen to those for more information. Now let's get into the third dimension inversions. The third dimension is physical, and it's the realm of biological life like human, plants, and animals. Well, to start off, how about we mention the fact that we are trapped in this physical realm because of the false matrix? Remember in a previous episode where I said the solfeggio frequency of the third dimension is 396 hertz, which is associated with liberation? Liberation means setting free and is associated with freedom. Within the divine order of God, to be incarnated into physical means to be free. As physical beings, we are pure God energy, source energy, the universe experiencing itself and getting to play in physical, in freedom for eternity. When I say we are pure God energy, or we are the universe experiencing itself, it is like the concept of mitosis of a cell. Mitosis is a fundamental process in cell biology where a single cell divides to produce 2 genetically identical cells. Even though the original cell splits into 2 separate, both cells are completely whole. Even though we come from God or source, God is still completely whole. and the divine mind. Then all things natural like humans, plants, animals, minerals are like cells that divided from this original divine God energy. Together we make up God's divine universe. And like I mentioned, with God's divine order, being in the physical means being liberated and being set free as energy to be free and explore for eternity. Yes, as physical beings, we are the universe or God experiencing itself. We're all one because we all are cells that split from original God or source energy. So, as you can see, this entire society on Earth right now, under the false matrix, is a huge, huge, huge inversion. Our natural divine state is to never ever be stuck anywhere or in any realm or experience. Outside of this, we can pop around experience to experience without constraints, and we build our dream eternal lives. Also, being bound to this specific body or avatar is an inversion. This is not normal. Death is the way out of this whole earth experience, which is also a huge inversion. It is all backwards and all inverted. Another example of an inversion related to the third dimension physical experience is the huge use of artificial materials like plastic. Artificial materials don't have the same frequency and resonance like natural materials do. And by now you see the huge importance of frequency and resonance. It is literally everything. And if you want to be dramatic again, we can view artificial materials and plastic also as Antichrist. Our entire universe must resonate at specific frequencies to have heaven on earth. So this part might be interesting. All biological life has consciousness, including plants. As humans, under the false matrix, we must consume plants and animals for energy, and animals must consume humans and other animals or plants for energy. Then, some plants like Venus flytraps consume animals, and some get their food from sun or light. In the free or heavenly realms, we don't have to eat other biological life since one, we are fully sustained by God or source energy, and two, in the totally free heavenly realms, you come and go from that incarnation or experience as you wish. You can view it like going back and forth from different homes or traveling. It's easy, natural, etc., but you're doing this for eternity. A soul doesn't incarnate into a cow and have to spend a life as a cow. In the totally free realms, you could pop in and experience that, but then leave. Your soul is free to do as you wish. In totally free realms, we eat for fun, for the beauty and the art of it, and not for energy or to sustain ourselves. The point I'm getting at is under these circumstances, it is totally natural to eat other biological life on Earth for fuel. Vegetarians and vegans seem to miss that plants also have consciousness. I do think we need to be cautious of the quality of the meat and the produce we consume. We need to make sure they were treated right and raised in a sustainable way. I am against large industrial farming. Vegans and vegetarians are fine if they're sticking with natural whole foods, but it begins to become an inversion when they start to eat more processed foods and these chemically made meat substitutes like Beyond Beef or whatever it's called. But I'm not just calling out vegans or vegetarians because any diet becomes an inversion when we eat processed and modified junk. We need to be eating organic whole foods and ideally get them from local farmers. You could say the Western diet in general is an inversion. Alcohol is also a huge inversion. It's absolutely terrible for the body and shreds our energetic system and shreds our energetic field. There's not enough time to go into how bad it is, but I've talked about this on other episodes. So that's a few examples, but I'm sure you can think of other third dimension inversions. Well, one right off the bat is putting artificial materials like breast implants in the body. I'm not judging because I totally see how this looks nice sometimes. I'm definitely not saying all cosmetic surgeries or procedures are inversions, though. Here's how I see it. If there's a physical, artificial material that stays in your physical body to plump it up or something like that, I view that as an inversion. But it isn't to do with the aesthetics unless it looks extremely unnatural. It's more to do with the artificial material in your physical vessel. And it all goes down to more about frequency. For example, a breast implant is very different to me than if you transferred your own fat into the breast. It is artificial material versus natural material. You see what I mean? Do you see how the majority of what we accept as reality are actually inversions? We accept it because we were born with amnesia essentially and programmed and brainwashed from birth. All of these inversions we unknowingly accept as reality align with Satanism. Now let's talk about second dimension inversions. The second dimension is Earth's magma core, minerals, crystals, energy portals, and vortexes. The second dimension solfeggio frequency is 285 Hz and associated with healing tissues and organs. Our bodies are electromagnetic and need to regulate energy properly to function correctly and in the ideal manner. Our body needs to be properly mineralized to regulate energy correctly. Both the Western diet and Western medicine are huge inversions. The Western diet is largely stripped of minerals and needed nutrients, and this leaves many actually starving for nutrients. Some have been poisoned in a way where their gut isn't even absorbing nutrients properly. This causes people to overeat because their body keeps telling the brain, feed me, I need nutrients, I need nutrients. When the body gets overrun with this nutrient void junk, the body doesn't work properly and people get health issues and gain weight. This causes people to get away from the ideal sacred geometrical shape of the body, and this also causes the body not to be able to anchor in the proper energy and regulate it correctly. Then Western medicine largely just masks the symptoms with pharmaceuticals, and these pharmaceuticals cause even more imbalances and they don't address the root issue. Then well-meaning people get brainwashed through the education system. Doctors and quote-unquote well-educated people get indoctrinated and they put in all this time and it gets tied up in the ego as well. The system seems to give people this superiority complex from being told they are more educated, and then many say, hey, follow the science, which science can be biased based on the funding of the research. And some research can even get buried. So many are brainwashed in this way, and then they seem to put down any talk of energy when it comes to health or holistic approaches. Let's just zoom out for a moment and think about God's divine order. This divine order is insane and magical, and all things are connected. With God's divine order, we would be able to treat issues with natural remedies, and there will certainly be a root issue that all stems back to some sort of imbalance. I've had my own issues with my skin breaking out and gut issues. Western medicine made all of my issues worse. It got better when I went the functional approach and started looking at root issues and how to address them. Now let's chat about first dimensional inversions. The first dimension is Earth's iron core. It is at or around 174 Hz frequency, which is associated with pain relief. This is tied to the body and nutrition as well, but many people are iron deficient. Iron is so important so our electromagnetic body pulses along with Earth and our environment. We all need to be in harmony and in harmonic resonance. Quickly back to the second dimension for a second. We also need to be grounded, and that comes from our bare feet being on the ground or swimming in salt water. But many of us spend most of our time indoors, at work, under fluorescent light. So, this is the true meaning of Satanism. It is all things natural and righteous the natural things that follow God's divine order, and inverted. By creating a society that believes or are programmed to do things that invert the divine order, this causes us not to anchor in higher dimensional energies. When we are cut off from higher dimensional energies or aren't doing things to anchor it in, we are trapped and stuck in a prison. It's kind of like a prison or cage with the door open. Yes, we are being controlled, but we are the divine ones and can't escape once we realize what is going on here and the underlying energetic mechanisms at play here. Now that we've gone over all of that, I want to talk about the concept of the devil. So, I said how Satanism is actually just taking something natural or in line with God's divine order and inverting it, and much of society is actually satanic, and many don't even realize it. I've also talked about the dark global elite and how, at the root of it, there are just a handful of entities running this dark pyramid. Other people in the pyramid are largely exploited, manipulated, and lied to, blackmailed, etc., and they go along with the dark agenda. So you might ask, okay, does the devil sit at the top of this pyramid? I'll talk about the archetypal idea of a devil in a moment, but to begin, no, there's no dark, all-powerful, supreme being or entity that leads the dark. View these dark entities more as parasites or parasitic energies. They don't actually have any independent power. The only energy or power they have is what they have harvested from humans. Humans are all innately connected to Source or God, whether they know it or not. That is energy that will fully sustain. The dark parasites only are able to keep control by manipulating, programming, and brainwashing humanity. You can be unknowingly guided, manipulated, and exploited by the dark parasites. So that's why it's really important you understand they exist, you understand how they work, and you know how to protect your energy. When we don't work to understand, bring light, and release traumas, triggers, and pains we have, that leads to an area that can be exploited by the dark parasites. These traumas and pains are low vibrational due to the emotional frequency they cause. We must work to get past any traumas, triggers, and pain so they don't cause a low vibrational emotional response that can be exploited. By exploit, I mean when we are in a low vibration that is in vibrational resonance with dark parasites, they can essentially get in our head and lead us astray. This is also a reason I am so against alcohol and recommend giving up drinking. Alcohol completely strips your energetic field and energetic protection. No matter how happy or fun you feel, you are opening yourself up energetically to dark parasite exploitation. This may not even be super obvious to some. The dark works in covert ways. One way is setting examples for your kids, younger adults, or peers who may view drinking as okay, but who are exploited in different ways by these dark parasites. It's pretty clear different people handle alcohol differently, and different people have different past experiences that can be exploited in different ways. I don't agree when people say alcohol or being drunk shows your true colors. Nope, I don't believe that. It just shows the way you're being energetically exploited by the dark parasites. I can look back and see how I was energetically exploited when I drank. I also have a friend that comes to mind because she is the most loving and caring person, but when she drinks, sometimes she will say blatantly mean, awful things. It's like a demon comes out for a moment. But back to this idea of a devil. Like I said, there's no supreme dark leader that we should be afraid of. The devil is just the darkness, pain, trauma, and triggers in you that the dark, non-powerful parasites can exploit. They are non-powerful because they have no energy outside of harvesting it from humanity. We can work through our triggers, our traumas, our pains, and release them and let that area fill with love, compassion, empathy, and light. This will raise our own vibration. Then that area will be cleared and the dark parasites can't exploit that area. When someone gets triggered by us and spews out low vibrational energy at us that comes from low vibrational emotions, we can transmute that low vibrational energy into high vibrational energy by stepping back, being the observer, and having empathy and compassion for them instead of responding with low vibe emotion like hate or shame. How do we have compassion and empathy for someone attacking us? By understanding all of these dark energetic mechanisms, brainwashing, and programming that I talk about. These people are essentially plugged into the false matrix of the fourth dimension and in mass psychosis. If you are listening to this podcast, you likely see past all of this and are detached from the programming where the attacker is not. So let's transmute any attack or low vibe energy into high vibe energy by having empathy and compassion. Don't be a punching bag though. You can have love or have empathy and compassion from afar. It is extremely important to protect yourself and have boundaries. Humans are innately good and want to do the right thing, but can be exploited by the dark parasites. A lot of society is being controlled by the dark and don't even realize it. Many people are plugged into the false matrix of the fourth dimension and essentially being spoon fed and following the dark programming. That doesn't mean humans are always victims or it's hopeless, because we can do things to disconnect from the false matrix and stop letting the dark control or influence us. We just need to raise our vibration so we're not in resonance with them. Even if you are overall very high vibrational, obviously there's things that come into play that might dip our vibration low, and that's okay. That's where it's really important to protect our energy. We want to be in resonance with God or source energy of the eighth dimension, which holds the unique frequencies of all of the dimensions under it. Resonating and anchoring in these higher dimensional energies will bring heaven on earth. When we trigger people, it is ultimately showing people where they need to work on themselves, the part that can be exploited, and where they need to shine light. Same for us. If we feel ourselves getting triggered by something, this is a sign that it's an area we need to explore, understand, release density from, and shine light on. Our triggers show us where we need to grow. If you like this content and you align or resonate with the archetypal idea of a light worker, you will probably accidentally trigger people just by being yourself and by shining light. Your light will show their dark, hidden areas, and this will come to the surface. For example, sometimes carefree, self-assured confidence can bring someone else's anxiety and insecurity to the surface and trigger them. Maybe they get triggered, reflect, and realize it was an overreaction, so they start to explore that area of themselves, get to the root, and move on from it and release that. That's a good example of this cycle that I talked about. Okay, that's all I have for today. I hope you found this interesting, and I hope this will give some insight on what Satanism really is, how we can see these inversions from what is natural, and maybe it will help us see things in a different way so we can move forward living more aligned with God's divine order. If you like this, please give me 5 stars, subscribe to my podcast, and share with a friend. I love you all. Have a great week.